Yeah. So and I guess it's definitely picking up.
Sure, our friends over here that are professors. Oh, here we go. This is probably it.
They reached out and get a third party.
All right, I think we're ready to get started. Thank you. Now that everyone has their pizza. Thank you guys so much for having us today to share a little bit about 1 in 5. We're really excited to be here and talk to your club and just about the work we do. And we are going to do a little bit of an interactive presentation. So we'll do some examples of the type of work that we do in the community and in schools with you today. You guys will get like the full experience of what it means to be part of a 1 in 5 training. So we're excited to be here and talk to you guys about our mission. And I'm gonna let you first.
Yeah. So my name's Taryn Cook. I'm the community program manager at 1 in 5. So our community program is pretty new. So if you ask me questions, I may or may not know the answer. But I'm a clinical social worker. As Amanda said, I did go to NKU. So I did my master's here. Shout out to the social work department. But I have a background in direct service, specifically working with young people who have experienced trauma. So I worked with emancipating foster youth for almost 7 years prior to coming to 1 in 5. So that's really kind of where my passions lie. And in that, 1 in 5 was just really appealing in the sense of creating more safe places and more safe spaces for mental health and for mental health awareness, and really just breaking down that stigma, which is one of our main pillars we'll talk about later. And then for fun, I enjoy pup walks. My dog and I were both very out of breath. That was a lot longer of a hike than we expected. But going to hockey games, buying plants, and eating good food. So that's a little bit about me.
And I'm Jess Hartley. I am the development manager at 1 in 5. So I'm primarily in a fundraising role, and I get to do talks like this in the community just to share more about what we do. My background was actually in community mental health. I did 7 years as a case manager for adults with severe mental illness. Then I took some time off. I was kind of hanging with my kids. I was a softball coach at Mount St. Joe, and now I coach softball at Turpin High School. And then I went back into nonprofit work, but I was more on the community relations side. I did a lot of fundraising and grant writing, that type of thing. So I've been at 1 in 5 since April, and our mission appealed to me because 2 reasons, actually. My brother at 16, my brother lost his best friend to suicide, and it really just impacted our entire family. That loss impacted our entire family. And then fast forward 20 years, and I was coaching at Turpin High School, and 2 students died by suicide a week apart. This was about 3 years ago. It was in the middle of our softball season. So walking alongside our students while they experienced the loss of their friend just was really, really impactful to me. So last year, another student died in our community by suicide also at Anderson High School. And at that point I said, I have to do something. I'm so passionate about this and it has to stop, and whatever I can do to help, I want to be part of that. So I became part of 1 in 5, and I'm mostly on the fundraising side. So just trying to raise support for our mission. I love to coach softball, I like to run, I like to read, and I like playing with my kids. So it's a picture of my oldest 2 kids, and we were traveling this summer.
All right, so we're gonna make everyone stand up and do a little activity. It's gonna be fun. And it is very lighthearted, so hopefully y'all enjoy. But this is called Wheelhouse Connection. So we're all just gonna walk around the room, and whenever we're gonna play some music, and whenever the music stops, you have to turn to whoever's closest to you and answer whatever question is up on the screen.
So just like wander around. You can dance if you want to.
I'm gonna take pictures of this.
Are you okay? Yeah, absolutely. That'd be amazing.
All right. Would you rather have a 3-year-long vacation to Europe or a free 30-minute trip to the moon?
All right. Back to mingling.
In which TV show, book, or movie would you most like to live in?
I want to do Spider-Man. I know, it's like, how's this working? There's like a triad. Oh, it's a graphic. Yeah.
I want some shenanigans.
Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, that's good.
All right, thank you again.
That's a good.
All right, back to walking.
That's the best one. Very hard. Scared me. Honestly,
Do you reference it like Lord of the Rings or anything like that?
If all animals could suddenly talk, which animal would be the most cool?
Camel. Camel, absolutely.
But have you? All right, last one. All right, last one. What makes a person family? too painful, and hopefully a little fun. Yeah, just social interaction is probably the only way. But thank you guys for all participating. We just wanted to do a little fun activity, one, just get people moving in the beginning, but also this is one of the activities that we often do in our presentations. So I'm gonna let Jess take it away.
All right, this is sort of just a story about the history of 1 in 5. So in pictured is
Sorry.
Nancy Eigel-Miller, our 1 in 5's founder, and her husband Jim. And in 2008, she lost Jim to suicide. She had 2 teenage daughters. He was happy in his job at Xavier, as far as she could tell. There were absolutely no signs that she recognized at the time that he was struggling. She had no idea that he had any history at all of mental illness. And when he died, and it was a complete and total shock to her family. And so Nancy took the next 2 years and just did a deep, deep dive into mental health, trying to learn everything she could about mental illness. What did she miss? What kinds of things could she have seen that she didn't recognize as signs that Jim was struggling? And what she learned were that he was showing signs of a mental health condition, and they were just signs that she didn't know how to recognize. And she thought to herself, so many people might be in this same situation where they don't know what they're looking for when it comes to mental health and wellness, and we're so afraid to talk about it. I wonder if there's something that I can do. And her wheels started to spin. During that time, some of Jim's closest friends decided to have a run in his honor. And you guys may have seen information about the Warrior Run, but they founded the Warrior Run, I believe, in 2010. And that was the first time that they had the race. They had it in Marymount. Jim was a coach in Marymount. He coached cross country, also coached youth soccer for a number of years. He had a lot of connections in the community. He was well loved. He had a big personality. He was known as the fun guy in the room. And people just showed up in droves for this race. So just to support him and to say to Nancy, hey, we're standing with you. And so they ran this race for a couple years, and as time went on, the attendance started to dwindle a little bit. And Nancy's 2 daughters came to her and said, Mom, this race is going to die if we don't do something. We've got to make this something bigger. And so she started to think about what that would look like. And at the time also, they were giving the money that was raised to Children's Hospital. Children's Hospital had a program at the time called Surviving the Teens. And it was a foundational mental health programming that was being done in schools. So the goal was to give the proceeds of the race to Children's Hospital. So backtrack, her daughter said, we've got to do something. So they actually turned it into a formal nonprofit at the time known as the Jim Miller Memorial Mile. And a couple more years went by, and there was a student that went missing at UC, and he was missing for 8 days. His name was Brogan Dully. And after Brogan was missing, they ended up finding that he had died by suicide. And Nancy called Santa Ono, then president of UC, the next morning and said, this has to stop. We have to do something about this. And Santa Ono called her back and said, Nancy, I've struggled with a mental health condition since I was in my teens. I've been hospitalized twice. I've actually attempted suicide twice. And he said, and I've never told anyone, but I'll tell my story for you. And so Nancy decided to quit her job, her full-time job. She was a market researcher for Gardner Business Media, and in fact was one of the leading researchers in the country. She quit her full-time job and dove full-time into this organization that's now known as 1 in 5. It represents the statistic that 1 in 5 adults will experience mental illness in any given year. And she began planning. And so Nancy planned basically 2 large fundraisers. One was the Spring for Life fundraiser, which was in the spring. It was a gala. And a second one was the Warrior Run that we just talked about. And she decided that she was going to just fundraise everything she could, as much as she could, for mental health programming in schools. So the next year, almost a year later, Santa Ono spoke at the very first annual Spring for Life event. And he shared his story publicly for the first time. By 10 o'clock that night, it was all over the news. It was in every social media outlet. Everyone around Cincinnati was talking about it. He was very open with his own personal mental health struggles. And really that was kind of the birth and inception of what is now known as 1 in 5. So at the start, we were only working with a handful of schools. And now we're in over 110 schools in all 6 universities in the Cincinnati area doing mental health programming. So it's a pretty incredible story, just to see how quickly 1 in 5 has grown to meet the growing need in the community. Some of the stats that we think are really important to understand is that 75% of all mental illness will be present by age 24. So youth are the key to changing this conversation, because we want kids to recognize the signs and symptoms of mental illness and be able to talk about them, especially because of this statistic. On average, it takes 8 to 10 years for someone to pursue treatment. So kids are waiting while they're symptomatic, while they're struggling, 8 to 10 years to start talking about it and tell someone and get the help they need. We want them to start doing that sooner. And we also want parents, caregivers, and teachers to be able to help them to recognize those signs so they can get the help they need. Almost 20% of students reported seriously considering suicide, and suicide is now the second leading cause of death for young adults under 24. Our mission is to prevent suicide by erasing the stigma of mental illness and promoting optimal mental wellness. And our vision is a community of youth with optimal mental health who will grow into their best selves. Just making sure I'm not missing. We really also believe that evidence-based education can change lives. We have 5 focus areas, and we're going to go into those in more detail. And each focus area, we'll do an interactive activity for you guys so that you can kind of understand like what the work is that we're doing. So the first one is education and programming. Stigma reduction and storytelling is another one. We really believe that youth will change the conversation, like we talked about before. Community engagement. We believe in unifying partners and getting everyone involved in this conversation, and that we really need to be proactive. We do some advocacy and policy work, trying to change the way that lawmakers make laws around mental health and mental health education. And finally, evidence-based research, data, and management. Our goal is truly to stop the stigma and start the conversation around mental health by increasing awareness. All right, I think this is me too. So for our education and programming pillar, we create a customized evidence-based program for each school based on their needs, utilizing a menu of 16 offerings. So we have different trainings that are offered, and we go into the school and we do a climate survey. We're going to talk about the process a little bit more later. We do a climate survey, we sort of assess what their needs are, and then we offer particular trainings that we think will best help them. So some of the key trainings that we do, one is called the Sources of Strength program. And this is kind of the messaging of Sources of Strength. We spread messages of help, hope, and strength. It's an upstream program, and Taryn's going to talk about that approach a little bit more. That really relies on this wellness wheel. It relies on protective factors. How can we gather the strengths that we already have when we're facing the symptoms of a mental illness, or when a friend is facing the symptoms of mental illness? So we train schools to run this peer-to-peer program within their own school. That's one of the big trainings that we do. We also do Mental Health 101, which is sort of just like a very high-level overview of mental health, the mental health continuum, and what to do when someone is in a crisis. We do QPR training, which is similar to CPR, but it's for a mental health crisis as well. It's helping people to question, persuade, and refer to the services that are needed, the treatment that's needed. We do a suicide screening called Signs of Suicide in partnership with Mindpeace, which actually puts therapy providers into schools. Am I missing anything? We do Recharge and Reconnect with teachers, because a lot of teachers, especially post-COVID, are facing a lot of burnout and just really struggling themselves. And so Recharge and Reconnect is a program for teachers that really kind of goes over this wellness wheel and helps them recognize the ways that they can draw on their own strengths. So Taryn's going to share a little bit more about sources and about the upstream approach we take.
Yeah, so I want to share a little parable with you guys. So upstream prevention, just really clarifying like what is upstream prevention. So I want to share a little parable that we like to tell people. So I want you guys to imagine with me that there is a woman taking a walk close to the river by the end of the waterfall. She goes on this walk every day, and one day she hears shouting. So she goes over to the river and sees a young person. She pulls them out of the river. She's able to give them CPR and get them to the help that they need, and she saves their life. You know, she's feeling really good about that, but wow, that was really scary, right? So the next day she goes on her walk and she hears shouting again. She goes to the river, finds another young person, pulls them out. The next day, the same thing occurs. So although, you know, she is feeling great about the fact that she can save a life, she also understands that young people can't continue to fall in the river. So she goes to her community and tells them we have a problem, and they totally agree. So what they do is they put together a little plan. So they have watchtowers. They have 24/7 people watching. They teach more people in the community CPR, and they even do swimming lessons. With that, they're able to save a lot of lives, but they're not able to save everyone. Sometimes they're linking arms in the river. Sometimes the current is too strong and it pulls them under. So one day the woman is working, again with the 24/7 watch, and she starts to walk upstream. And they ask, "Where are you going? This is all hands on deck. Like, we need you here." And the woman responds, "I'm going upstream to find out why they're falling in." So when we say upstream prevention or radical, call it like radical upstream approach, this is what we mean. So this kind of shows you a little bit about the story a little further labeled. So a lot of times when we think of prevention, we're thinking of this intervention space, which is super important. That's that direct intervention, that one-on-one support. But also with that, we need that upstream prevention. We need that that installation of those protective factors that Jess said. We need to be able to show and educate people on what those risk factors are, what to look for, because sometimes, you know, as we said, we can't save everyone, but we want to be able to help people and also teach them the skills to be able to even get themselves out of the river when the water is still tranquil. So when we say upstream prevention, kind of the backstory behind it. And so Sources of Strength is the program that we use. It is evidence-based, and as Jeff said, it's peer-to-peer. So we do this inside of schools and utilize adult advisors for the young people to go to, but it is instilling mental health, talking about it, instilling mental health programming, talking about it, breaking down the stigma, and also embedding resources within the school.
This is again just kind of showing the cycle of how we work with schools. So when we first go into a school, we do this climate survey and we sort of just take kind of a note of how are they doing with mental health, what types of programming is already in place, how are they addressing mental health in their own school community. And then based on the results of that survey, we do a programming recommendation and we make a long-term plan. So when schools work with us, ideally, they work with us from start to finish. There are, of course, some schools that call us and they say, all we want is QPR training. And we'll still go in and do QPR training, but we really want them to do this cycle from start to finish because it allows us to collect data at the beginning and the end and really see like how we're making an impact. After we make a programming recommendation, we implement the programming. So we'll do any trainings that we need to do. And then kind of the school sort of owns some of these programs moving forward, like Sources of Strength. And we're available on a consulting basis after we implement the program. So then we'll be in kind of communication with the school, with the administration and the teachers and the advisors throughout the year. How can we help? What do you need the most help with? Is there something else that we can come in and do with your students or with your staff that would help you to better implement these programs? And then at the end of the year, we do an assessment and kind of just see like what were the results. So we have tools that we provide that not only screen, they educate, and they reach young people through this ongoing process of consultation. These are some of the schools that are working with us. It's not an exhaustive list, obviously. I can't put 110 of them on the slide, but we do currently work with over 110 schools and 6 universities in the greater Cincinnati area. And we partner with Mindpeace and Cincinnati Children's. So Cincinnati Children's still provides that foundational training. It's now called Adapt for Life. It's what it was originally, Surviving the Teens. But Cincinnati Children's will provide that foundational training, and that's really in the classroom with students. And then we provide all of our prevention programming, and Mindpeace provides treatment. So they do the interventions and treatment on site. We partner with them to get all of the tiers hit. So there's a basic education, there's treatment, and there's prevention.
So we're gonna do a fun activity. So when we talk about programming, some of the different programming we do is Summer Scholars. So in Cincinnati Public Schools, they do Summer Scholars. It's a free program for kids to come to. And so we're going to do a little activity that we do then. And I have this very annoying preschool voice when I do this.
Faculty, will you share your worksheets with the students, please?
All right, I think more people showed up than we thought, which is positive.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, so one of the activities we do is your brain. So we think it's really important for young people to understand their own noggin, right? So one of the things we do to teach that is this little worksheet, and it's also fun because you can color it. So we talk about your owl, your guard dog, and your elephant. So again, I'm going to try really hard not to do my like terrible. So if everyone point to your prefrontal cortex on the front of your noggin, so you're going to point to your forehead. So this is your prefrontal cortex, but in this context, we're going to call it your wise owl. Your wise owl helps you think, plan, and it helps you really think through your decisions before you make them. So I'm going to do a little Everyone point to the wise owl. You guys did great. The next is your amygdala, which is kind of hard to point to, I will say. So we're going to go behind the ear. Maybe they're up here a little bit. But you can go behind the ears. So this is your guard dog. So we call it your guard dog because it feels like you're in danger. It goes real loud. So when we are not feeling safe, our guard dog alerts us. And can you point to your guard dog? Great. The last is your hippocampus, which we're going to call the elephant, which is the memory saver. Which, by the way, it just says memory saver. One of the kids pointed out, why isn't it a hippo? Well, it's supposed to be an elephant because they're supposed to have great memory. But let's call it a hippo. But we're going to point to our hippocampus. So this is your elephant. Yeah, is it more up there? I'm like, I don't know exactly where to point to. Just this region. Yeah, it's really in there. So hands down. And we are going to put you right now. And your elephant. And your guard dog. All right. So sometimes when we're feeling really overwhelmed, or maybe we're scared, overall just something doesn't feel right. Your fight, flight, or freeze, which you again, I know y'all know. But when our fight, flight, or freeze kicks in, that's when our guard dog starts barking like crazy, right? Which then can scare off our owl. When our owl isn't there, we really can't think through, what those decisions are. And so that's when our fight, flight, or freeze really just kicks in. And that's why sometimes when we're really upset, we don't feel like we can think straight. So going back, I would then tell them we do a little like Simon says in a sense of where to point. But I think it's really important as we explain to kids that there is anatomy and there is like a reason for why you feel like, wow, I just can't process. Like I'm having all these big feelings and I don't know what to lot of aha moments for young people when they realize like, well, no wonder I can't think. My owl left the building. And the guard dog is just going wild. So just wanted to share like one of the little activities that we do. We did this one with K through 6, and it was really awesome. Again, a lot of aha moments. I think a lot of times when we think about young people, yes, we used analogies here, but we're also using real words of the different parts of your brain. And I think a lot of times we do try to water it down, but young people want to know what's going on in their body. I remember working with a young man who's 16, and we just explained chemicals in the brain, right? And like I don't get it. Like I don't need to take medication, which again is a personal choice. That's with somebody in the doctor. But he had a bipolar diagnosis, and it was pretty severe. And he just didn't understand. Went through in the brain what occurred. It's like, I get it. It's not a problem with me. I just don't have what I need something else. I need a little help. That's okay. And so from then on out, I mean, that was the change of history. So really thinking of, I mean, our kids are so cool. So really just talking to them and really so again, highly recommend you use this as a coloring page. It's quite fun. Great stress reliever. But yeah, thank you guys for doing that activity.
Do you want to do a quick like explanation of what your activity on the right is?
Oh,
like a really
yeah.
brief, like
Yeah, so this was everyone calls these a little different. You know those little fortune tellers you did?
Yeah.
Those were the bomb. So this is one based on sources of strength. So sources of strength wheel has healthy activities, mentors, positive friends, family support, mental health, physical health, spirituality, and generosity. So really spirituality, we do a lot of gratitude in. But when we do this is also a great thing to do with kids to work on mindful listening. So you give the instructions of how to fold, and then they can do the activities in their home, which is a great way to share with their parents what they're learning, as well as with their fellow peers. And so one of them is just ask a friend how they're really doing and just listen. So it's not like it's anything, wild, but just ways to continue to spread mental health friendly environments and learning beyond in ways that maybe you wouldn't think traditionally.
So our second pillar after education and programming is stigma reduction. And we do a lot of stigma reduction with storytelling. And we just try to get everyone's different stories about their own experiences with mental health and how they've managed that out into the media, social media, through our YouTube videos, all kinds of different outlets. We have a speaker series called the State of Mind Speaker Series. We received a grant and we're able to do that with Mindpiece. So those are longer presentations that are available out on our YouTube channel, and they're all people that are sharing their stories. I believe Nick Gepper, the skier, is one of them. And so it's people from, all over the US actually that have participated. And then we have a blog, a wellness blog that we also have guest bloggers on that tell their story with mental health and wellness. So this is an example of one of our TikTok videos or
and just
Instagram reels, TikTok.
Yeah, I was just gonna preface our social media for a nonprofit doing pretty well. So this video I think got like 10,000 likes on Instagram, which I think is pretty good. But I don't know. I didn't know who she was at first, but this is a pretty popular TikToker. She had like 800,000 followers, but she did this one for us. Can I turn the volume off? Okay.
I'm really proud of you today. I literally haven't done anything, but you're here. That's enough. Keep it up, cutie. I'm proud of you.
But just a cute little clip. But yeah, she made that for us.
I'm really proud of you today.
Sorry. But
And
yeah.
then Taryn's going to talk a little bit about what she does in the community. And then we're going to do a demo of our tabling events. So
Yeah, so there's some different ways that we activate the community, and one of the ways is through partnerships. So I listed a couple partnerships that we've worked a little more heavy with. So I actually just started at 1 and 5 in June. It was the last day of May. We're rounding, so June-ish. And so one of the big things was just really building into some partnerships and some key communities. So we did a lot of research gathering of what areas in Cincinnati need additional support, and the areas of like stigma reduction, just mental health education. And honestly, just talking to people who are experts in those spaces, and really just getting that data. There's an organization that did vulnerability within the community. That was some wild data. Life expectancy. I think the highest life expectancy in Cincinnati is a white male living in Indian Hill. I think he can live into his late 80s. And lowest life expectancy is a Black male living in Price Hill, who was mid 60s. So that is a tremendous difference. So really looking at like, what are the needs in our community? And we also know that it's not one size fits all, just like in our school programming. What one community needs doesn't mean that that can be applicable to the next. So right now we're focusing on the Vaughn Hill Roselawn area, Lower Price Hill, Evanston, and oh my gosh, I'm like blanking.
The
West End, yeah. Thank you. Exactly where CityLink is. But yeah, so we're really focusing on 4 neighborhoods right now and building up partnerships in those areas, because we also know to build trust with the community, we do need to partner with these agencies who already have that trust in those areas. So also doing the community educator program. This is a new program where we're hiring 10 contractors. We have a few people currently, but different people, and we would love if they lived in that neighborhood. But different people who are mental health experts in the space and can do some of these trainings and activities within the community. Also community conversations. So really just understanding, doing focus groups, things along that nature, as well as different community events. So we try to be specific about different events that we do within the community. We do a lot of tabling. So we just kind of set up and give resources, talk about mental health. And a lot of times it's just opening that conversation, right? Especially when we say that we do suicide prevention. I call it the S word because nobody wants to say it, as well as just mental illness in general. I can't tell you how many people will come up and say like, what is this? It's 1 in 5, very different name. What does this mean? And it just opens up the conversation, and they're like, it is okay to talk about, yeah, my cousin has, a mental illness, or my sister, or my wife, or they do. So a lot of times it is just opening a door. But in that, we like to give out different resources of how to find a provider, how to get help for yourself, but also how to help a friend or a family member. So we also know that people love free things, so we do a lot of prizes. So who would like to volunteer? Anyone? Thank you, friend. Come on up.
So if we went to a community event, a lot of times we're going to set up a table like this, and we're going to use the wheel to help us start the conversation around mental health with people that are at the event. So give it a spin.
Absolutely.
Oh, I have never seen that happen.
I broke it. Sorry. If it makes you feel better, I actually broke it a while ago. So it just, I'm gonna hold both. I'm gonna do a little like. You got movies. This is like not a very mental health one, but I love it. So behind we have little questions that we use each time. Movie, but it's just, what is your favorite movie? I don't watch movies. You don't?
Oh, spin again.
I
I read books, that's it.
What is something in your life you're most proud of?
Writing a book.
That's amazing. What's your book called?
Damnation Rewritten. I haven't published it yet.
Well, we look
Yeah, that's exciting.
So then we would offer you a prize. Which one has that? Thank you for volunteering. But yeah, so all the different questions are just, yeah, I saw somebody clap. But all of the questions, they're not anything too deep that we need to go into a therapy session for immediately after, but it's just really focusing on people's strengths. So some of the questions are, what's something you're really good at? What's a song that instantly puts you in a better mood? Which I love because then I get a whole bunch of recommendations. But a lot of times it's just a lot of things to try to brighten people up, brighten their day a little bit, and recognize those strengths and positive qualities of themselves. So it's a really great way to kind of start that conversation. And again, it's always funny when young people come up like, and then they'll do it, and then all of a sudden their siblings are interested. So I do think it's a really good way to draw people in.
Absolutely. And when you guys are on your way out, feel free to grab, we have some affirmation cards, some affirmation pencils. We've got some little buttons up here. So grab some 1 in 5 swag on your way out the door. Our fourth pillar is advocacy and policy. So we advocate for policy change at the state and federal level. We were involved with the Save Students Act, and Sandy Hook actually recognized us. So we thought that was pretty cool, or not recognize us, but recognize the Save Students Act. SAVE stands for, I wrote it down if you don't know, Safety and Violence in Education. And basically it's just a starting point. It's not enough, but the state now requires at least 1 single hour of suicide prevention education in schools every year. So we know that's not enough, but it's something. And so we were advocates for that, the passage of that bill in Ohio, and we're hoping that, we'll continue to build on that. So we just really like to get involved in, what's going on at the policy level. So I'd like you guys to take a second and just turn and talk to somebody who's sitting next to you. What changes do you think need to be made with the current mental health policies and mental health education policies in our state? Are there things that you can think of, that you feel like might be a problem? You can go ahead and talk. One example would be somebody said in a call I was on last week, it's interesting, we pull kids out or pull parents out of the room when the pediatrician asks the sex questions. Why aren't we doing the same thing when they ask the mental health questions? So that might be something that could be advocated for at the state level. So go ahead and just talk for a couple minutes about what you think of that might be helpful with mental health policy. I know, I think we need to hurry. All right, guys, for time purposes, we're gonna bring it on back. Move on. We know some of you have class at 1, so we're gonna try to get you out of here pretty shortly. But I think there's a lot of great conversations that can be had around this, and something that we really just want to continue to do is having those conversations about what needs to happen at the policy level. So finally, our last pillar is data and measurement. We really want to just collect as much data as possible and then utilize that data to help change the landscape around mental health. We were going to do a little word cloud about what you guys think are the biggest challenges facing college students, but we're going to skip that because we're running out of time. So I do want to show you this mashup that we made of some of the stories that we've collected. I think it's really powerful and it's a great way to end before we talk about ways you can help. So.
Hi, I'm Natalie.
And I live with generalized anxiety disorder.
So it all started in my freshman year of high school.
Really early on, my friend Joe committed suicide.
So I think it gradually got worse for sure.
The anger grew, and so did the anxiety in me.
And that's kind of where I became isolated, and I started to self-medicate with marijuana and alcohol.
Things started to spiral out of control to the point where I was scaring myself. And days got harder and harder. I didn't feel like I belonged, and I didn't feel like I had anyone to depend on.
Even if I tried to explain it, I don't know if a lot of people that could just go over their head, they wouldn't understand.
I don't think I realized how bad it was until it was too bad. I just started to contemplate if it was all worth it or not.
I realized that I couldn't keep going on the way I was.
So I started going to see a psychologist from there.
I was able to, sit down with someone and really talk about what was going on.
I learned that my secrets that I was keeping inside were making me sick. It's scary to tell your story. It's scary to say, hey, I'm not perfect. But I think that there's power in the truth.
It took years for me to finally realize that I was going to be okay. I'm never going to quit. And I am successful, and I will fight for my life.
And there's one thing I did want to point out in the video. She does say committed suicide, and I just want to take this as an education point. We tell people the preferred is die by suicide. There's a lot of negative connotation that really leads into stigma around mental illness. We talk about committed, you commit a crime, you commit a sin. So just pointing that out there that if you do ever use that word, we prefer die by suicide.
These are just a few ways you can help. You can sign up on our website to be a 1 in 5 volunteer, and you can help us with some of the tabling events that we were talking about. We pack calm boxes for teachers, which are sort of just like a box of treats that have them help them to feel mentally well. It has some tea and a little mug in it and some other things just that sort of just refresh their spirits. A lot of times we'll send them over to a school that just has been really struggling for a variety of reasons. So we also do rock painting. So a lot of times what we have to do is just paint a rock a solid color before we go out to an event, and then the kids will write, it's a positivity rock, so then the kids will write a little positive message on it, but the rocks have to be prepped in advance. Also, we have 2 big events, Spring for Life and the Warrior Run 5K, and we always need volunteers for both of those. We do have an internship program as well. There are 3 cycles. There's a spring, summer, and fall. It's approximately 10 hours per week. They are paid internships. And you can gain experience, relationships, obviously, networking. It's just a really great opportunity. And we typically have 8 to 10 interns at a time. So there are a lot of opportunities with us. And that information is also on our website. I'm going to give you guys a QR code that you can scan if you're interested in either the signing up for the Warrior Run 5K or some of our internship opportunities. So I'll leave that up on the screen as you guys head out, and feel free to just grab a picture or scan the QR and take some swag. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them and head off to class. So thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate it. I hope you could see us.
Don't be afraid to take 3 things.
Thank you all so much for
Take a
doing
selfie.
this.
Yeah.
It's really good. You turn the recording off?
I think I did
All
not
right.
see. Oh, record.